Nobody wins when the family.
Today we talk about Roger That and Miss Betty Idle. Right now, Betty Idle is a lover of hip hop, things like that. She did some reality TV. Roger That is a well-known New York City, I'll say quote unquote, alleged scammer. He been arrested a few times for different scams. I know one last one that would hit the news was like some post office scammers, like something to do with the mail.
Made some incredible records, and ever since then we were like inseparable.
Now, D. Smith is transgender.
Yeah.
When people research you or your name, do people think you're transgender too?
If my sister was white, that this case would have been fast, that this case would have been taken seriously, that boy would not be free right now. But that my sister is color, my sister is of color, so she doesn't get the same justice.
Reality show is facing big-time charges accused of real estate fraud in Volusia County.
Man, recently the daughter of an alleged cartel member, according to her own story, went from a singer to reality TV star, and now, according to authorities, accused of being involved in an elaborate real estate scam out Florida. Salam Betty Idle Jackson is her name. Now, if you watch reality TV over the years, you might have recognized her from Lovin' Hip Hop Atlanta or VH1 Cartel Crew, where she openly talked about growing up with the father she say was involved with the Cali cartel. Now, don't get it wrong, Betty's story was already a crazy one before these charges ever came. Growing up around a cartel lifestyle, not always being able to have her father around, and eventually putting that story on national television. She built a career as a singer. She lost her 17-year-old little sister, which we'll later talk about and identify, after she was shot while hanging with friends at an Airbnb. At one point in time, she was judged over her appearance, with people questioning her gender because of her best friend, something Betty addressed herself years ago.
Now, you and D. Smith, you guys are best friends in real life?
Yeah, we're best friends in real life.
How'd you guys meet?
Through Polo Don. He introduced us because I'm an amazing songwriter. D is an amazing producer. And he put us together to work on the Gwen Stefani album at that time. And we locked in, we made some incredible records, and ever since then we were like inseparable.
Now, D. Smith is transgender.
Yeah.
When people research you or your name, do people think you're transgender too?
Oh, I've been getting that a lot on my page. I've been noticing, some of the fans and stans, they'll say, oh, you're transgender, you're this or you're that or whatever. And I'm like, whatever. Okay, well, if you think so, thank you so much, because they wake up and slay, and that means I look hot. Thank you. So I don't take offense to it. I mean, even some other interviews, they ask me, and I'm like, no, I was born a woman, but, thanks.
Do people just say that because they assume, or are they trying to down you when they say that? Is it more of a negative thing, or is it just they don't know because they just see a relationship with you and D. Smith, so they just assume?
I think that some people, as far as the fans or the stans, they would try, like the way that they would word it, it would be in a negative way. They would think that it's, they would try to, I guess, attack me and say this to, I guess, quote unquote, hurt my feelings. But, and I think it's pretty much just because, like, they just don't understand that, I have a transgender friend and I'm not transgender, It kind of blows my mind. I'm like, whoa, like, are you guys that kind of a little, slow?
No, I wanted to put that clip there because regardless of what anybody thinks about Betty today, this is somebody who's been through a lot publicly. But now, she's facing a criminal case of her own. Today we go over Betty Idle's story, her rise growing up around a cartel lifestyle, the tragic loss of her sister, and the allegations that now have her facing 4 felony charges in Florida. But before we go over this one, I want you guys to remember, I won't give you no angle. I just give you the story. So with that being said, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. We'll jump right to it.
A few months ago, I realized I was probably overpaying for car insurance. Like every year, it just kept going up and up. And I never really questioned it. The insurance company count on that. Most people just count on whatever the renewal says without even checking if something cheaper is out there. Then I found this site called SMARTERAUTO. Took me like 2 minutes to check. And I realized there was actually cheaper options out there. I ended up using it myself, and it worked well for me. So I partnered with SMARTERAUTO to share it. Here's exactly what happens when you check it out. Scan the QR code on screen, or click the link that's in my description. You'll answer a few quick questions, your car, zip code, basic info like that. Then you'll see a table with different insurance quotes and rates, side by side. You compare the options, pick whichever works for you. And it takes you straight directly to that provider to sign up and start saving. It's completely free, takes a couple minutes. And if it's a cheaper option out there with your name on it, you're not gonna find it by doing nothing. So this your sign. Scan the QR code or use the link that's in the description right now. Check your rates and see how much you could be saving. Now check out on the next one.
The song you just heard was Thug Cry, featuring Lil Wayne and Betty Idle. Betty wasn't just doing music hoping somebody would eventually notice her. She actually landed one of the biggest opportunities of her career, alongside Rick Ross. That was a hell of a look. You're talking about Rick Ross, Lil Wayne, a major album. And Betty's voice is actually part of the record, the hook. So before a lot of people knew her from reality television, Betty already had gotten the opportunity to have her voice heard alongside two of the biggest names in hip-hop. And from there, another door would open, VH1, Lovin' Hip Hop Atlanta. On the show, it seemed that she had conflict with not only Bambi, but Waka Flocka's. In 2020, Betty had already dealt with a lot, but nothing would compare to what had happened to her little sister. On May 18, 2020, Betty's 17-year-old sister, Giselle Gigi, was hanging out with friends inside an Airbnb in Miami's Carrollway neighborhood. Among those friends was 17-year-old Michael McGraw. According to police, Michael was handling the gun when it fired, striking Gigi in the head and killing her. According to reports, they was passing the gun around like it was hot potato. Michael told investigators that the shooting was accidental, and according to the arrest report, cited at the time, the other teenagers who were there intentionally cooperated that account, but Betty wasn't buying it. Now, we ended up getting paroled. Gigi was pissed, but by 2023, he was back arrested for doing C, violating his probation.
If my sister was white, that this case would have been fast. That this case would have been taken seriously, that boy would not be free right now, but that my sister is color, my sister is of color, so she doesn't get the same justice as a white girl. I guess that would get shot in the head by a black boy. So the fact that my sister is black, she doesn't get the same justice. The person gets to go home and fucking be with their family while my sister is not with us anymore. That's what you call justice out here in fucking America. That is justice in fucking America. There's no fucking justice in fucking America.
The only on 6. The man who confessed last year in killing a 17-year-old girl at a house party was back in court today to make another confession.
This time he admitted that he was doing cocaine and violated probation. The shooting was back in 2020 and the victim's family was outraged when the killer avoided prison. NBC6 reporter Christian Colon joins us live now with the story you'll see only on 6. Christian.
Yeah, well, Michael McGowan admitted he was the shooter and was sentenced to probation, but he broke that probation in August. And today, state attorneys were really hoping the judge sentenced him to prison time this time around, but it didn't go their way.
It was May 2020 when 17-year-old Giselle Rengifo was killed at a party. Michael McGowan admitted he pulled the trigger by accident.
He's selfish, it's all about him, and he doesn't care that this young woman is dead. He just doesn't care. Your Honor, she's sentenced to 11 and a half years in prison.
Today, state attorneys were furious because McGowan violated his probation. Last October, he avoided prison and got 5 years probation instead. Video shows the Rengifo family outraged after that decision. This August, records show McGowan tested positive for cocaine during a random drug test. He also failed to complete 200 hours of community service.
He could have been doing the community service hours all along if he put in the effort. Absolutely. But he just didn't put in the effort. No.
A probation officer told Judge Lodi Jean today McGowan is always working, and when the officer confronted him about the drugs, he claimed it was a mistake.
I asked him, why is he using? He said it was a mistake. It was a friend came over and he shouldn't have. That's basically it.
And despite prosecutors wanting prison time, judge once again chose rehabilitation outside of a cell.
He admitted, the judge recognized that he was remorseful, that, just because you're on probation doesn't mean you're infallible. He made a bad decision. The judge treated him appropriately, the way she would treat any other offender who comes before her with a similar type violation.
And just to wrap it up, the judge gave him 10 more months of supervision. He will have to do more drug tests. He'll also need to keep up with substance and mental health treatment. We did reach out to the victim's family about this violation. We haven't heard back yet.
Now, shortly after, she would re-enter the reality TV series, but this time it would be in a new direction. She put on the accent and she would go with a Cartel series. And at this moment, she would expose her past. Somewhat hard to confirm, but this is what she had to say about growing up with her dad and choosing this reality TV series just 4 years ago.
And but no, now I'm on Cartel Crew. I'm not on Love and Hip Hop anymore. I'm on Cartel Crew.
Okay. Hey, I was gonna ask you about your sister. Can you explain?
She went to an Airbnb party.
Yeah.
And there was an idiot there who was he brought a gun, and then she was sitting in front of him, and then he shot her.
Her sister was murdered.
Yeah, my sister was murdered. So we're going to court. We're having court right now for that and everything. So that's been a lot.
I'm sorry. It has been a lot.
It has.
Since we're talking about things that you have gone through in your life and your struggle, can we bring up a little bit? Like, you tell me if you want to talk about this or not, okay? She's the original Colombiana. I don't know if you know.
Yeah.
but she got Colombian roots.
Yes.
And has grown up kind of gangster, per se.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because look, I'm a kid. I'm just going to put it out there. My mother was really worried about me because I watched way too many movies, and I always told her I was going to marry the mob.
What?
Yes. And I was like the good girl who always dated people that I probably shouldn't have dated until I got a real touch of dating the mob. And then I ran.
You was like, no, I don't want to do it.
Okay. It got hot. I was like, this is not for me.
Right.
What is it like being kind of born into that lifestyle?
I mean, I had a good childhood. It was just difficult because, like, we couldn't really stay in the same place with my dad all of the time because we were always kind of like running from the feds. But overall, I had a good childhood. I mean, there was some times where it was like really hard. It's like, for one, our house, like, we weren't allowed to go to Colombia because they would have kidnapped us and stuff like that and held us for ransom. They held like my nanny for ransom. They held my aunts for ransom. They murdered my uncle. My dad couldn't go to the funeral because they were planning on killing him there.
Look at Courtney's face. Courtney, I didn't explain the story. I told you I'm a fan, so I've been following her forever. Her dad is like a boss, basically.
Yeah.
Hey, can you tell these stories? Are you okay? You sure we can be talking about all this? Because
it already happened a long time ago. Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying, like, I'm saying things that I went through, as far as like our house getting raided and stuff like that. But I mean, he's already did his time, so he's back home now. They deported him.
Thank God. And I'm asking because as a kid watching these movies, like, in my mind, it was like this glamorous lifestyle, but you actually lived it.
Yeah, I mean, it is glamorous, but then it's difficult too, There's always two sides. So you get the glitz and the glam, but there's the danger too that comes with it.
That is not cool.
Yeah, no, because it's like,
yeah,
we would always have to like pray that my dad would come home,
So now we got a pretty idea on who Betty Idle is, or at least the image she's putting on social media, which is kind of hard to validate. Fast forward to 2025, and this story starts with a married couple named Mario and Ann Mazzola. The Mazzolas already own property in Orange City, Florida. They own land where remote homes can be housed at. And in July, they noticed something that caught their attention. A parcel of land right next to their property was for sale. So naturally, Mario was interested. He reached out to Susan Williams, a legitimate real estate agent with Caldwell Banker, whose information was displayed on the property. And that's what makes this alleged scheme so crazy. Because according to investigators, the realtor herself believed the sale was real. Susan had been communicating with people she believed were the property owners, Harriet Claire Parsons and John A. Roberts. The person claiming to be Claire Parsons provided identification. Documents were being exchanged. A contract was prepared. From the Mazzala's perspective, this looked like a normal real estate transaction. So on July 14, 2025, they entered into a contract to purchase the property for around $200,000. Mario initially wired $2,000 in escrow. Everything appeared to be moving towards closing, but there was one problem. Nobody on the buyer's side knew yet. According to detectives, Claire Parsons wasn't selling the property. Matter of fact, when the investigators eventually contacted the real Claire Parsons, she told them she had never listed the property for sale. She hadn't visited the property lately, but she didn't know why a for sale sign was sitting on it. And investigators say the driver license being used by the woman pretending to be Claire, it was fraudulent. They also contacted the other owner, John Roberts. Same thing. He reportedly told investigators the property was not for sale. So whoever was behind this allegedly wasn't just trying to fool Mario and Ann. They allegedly inserted themselves into a legitimate real estate process and convinced a real realtor that she was communicating with the actual owners. And the Mazzalas, they still didn't know any of this. As closing approached, there were issues getting a survey completed, so extensions were requested. Twice. Eventually, questions started coming up about the property boundaries. Mario tried contacting Suzanne to figure out what was going on. He couldn't reach her. At one point, he spoke with someone claiming to be her supervisor and was eventually told, stop calling because attorneys were involved. Now Mario knows something ain't right, so he starts reaching out to the company he believed was handling the closing, Old Republic Title, and that's when this whole thing started falling apart. Because Mario had been communicating with a supposed escrow officer named Felix Ford. But when investigators contacted the real Old Republic Title, according to the affidavit, there was no Felix Ford working there. And the bank accounts Mario had been instructed to send money to, investigators say those weren't Old Republic's legitimate accounts either. The problem was, by the time Mario figured this out, he had already sent the money. On August 13th, 2025, Mario wired $196,786.65, nearly $200,000 gone. And once investigators got involved and started looking at the account that received it, they realized whoever had the money wasn't letting it sit around. By the end of August, that account had $359 left. So now the question became, where the hell did almost $200,000 go in a matter of weeks? And that's when detectives started following the money. And this is where Betty Idle's name starts getting a whole lot closer to this case. So investigators have this woman on surveillance at a Citibank ATM in New York, making a $9,000 check deposit into an account they believe was open using someone else's identity. They believe it's Betty, but now they gotta prove it. According to the affidavit, investigators used facial recognition technology as an investigative lead, and that lead pointed them towards Salam Jackson. But they found something even more interesting. Betty had already been arrested in New Jersey back in 2023, and according to investigators, that case also involved a bank. The affidavit says Betty allegedly went into a bank attempting to open a bank account using identification containing another woman's personal information, but Betty's photo. So detectives reached out to the detective who had previously dealt with Betty during that previous case. They showed him the surveillance images from the new investigation, and according to the affidavit, he identified the woman as Salam Jackson, aka Betty. Now detectives have more than facial recognition. They have somebody who previously encountered Betty personally identifying her in the footage. But the $9,000 transaction wasn't the only time investigators say Betty showed up around this money. Remember that $98,000? The biggest chunk that disappeared? Detectives followed that too. Eventually, $98,038.83 reached the Wells Fargo's account of Old Republic Title TD LLC. The account investigators say was connected on paper to James Armstrong, who denied knowing anything about the company. Then came a huge cash withdrawal. $63,845.88 was taken out in cash at a Wells Fargo branch. Now, according to investigators, Betty wasn't the person who withdrew that money. Surveillance showed a black male conducting that transaction. And that's important because this affidavit doesn't allege Betty was necessarily doing everything herself. There were clearly other people detectives were looking at, but investigators say Betty herself would appear again. The alleged surveillance captured her making a $1,000 ATM withdrawal connected to the account, and later they say she was captured depositing $17,000 in a check into that same account. So now Betty allegedly appeared around multiple pieces of the money trail. But here's where the investigation gets even stronger, because detectives didn't only have to depend on cameras anymore. They started looking at where the cars connected to these accounts were being used. And one of those cars started traveling. New York, an airport, an airplane, then Miami. And investigators say Betty was making the exact same trip at the exact same time. Now this is where detectives started putting together more than just bank records, because according to the affidavit, money from the Mazzellas had also gone into Beaconcourt Renovations LLC. Remember, the real Victor Beaconcourt told investigators that wasn't his company. He lived in Georgia. He said he had never operated Beaconcourt Renovations and believed somebody had stolen his identity. So detectives started looking at where the money in the account was actually being spent. On August 22, 2025, the car get used at LaGuardia Airport in New York. Then there's a charge for American Airlines Wi-Fi. So investigators subpoenaed American Airlines, and according to the records they received, the car holder was listed as Salam Jackson, and there was a flight that day going from LaGuardia to Miami. Now that's interesting, because once the car gets to Florida, investigators say the spending continues. Publix, AMC, Alo Yoga, and even the Sea-Top Miami Beach. Then, on August 25th, airline records show Betty flying from Miami back to New York. So look at what investigators are building here. The car is being used in New York. Betty allegedly gets on a flight from New York to Miami, and the car stopped being used in Miami. Then Betty flies back to New York. That's a whole lot harder to explain than somebody simply using her name. But detectives still weren't finished, because another account they investigated were called K&J Whitfield Properties LLC, and according to the affidavit, that account had hundreds of thousands of dollars moving through it. Then in September 2025, the car connected to that account started getting used around Miami and Bal Harbor, and whoever had the car wasn't shopping cheap. Over 2,000 in Rick Owens, over 1,300 in Givenchy, over 1,100 in Christian Louboutin, over 1,600 in Goyard, and then in Gucci, almost $10,000. Now, just because a car get used at Gucci doesn't prove Betty was the one standing there spinning it. So detectives subpoenaed the stores. And this is where it gets bad. Investigators send customers information connected to almost 2,500 purchases. Was the name listed? Betty Idle. Not Salam. Not some random person. Betty Idle. The same Salam had publicly used throughout her entertainment career. Then detectives subpoenaed Gucci. Remember that purchase over $9,000? According to the affidavit, Gucci records identified a customer as Salam Jackson. Now detectives have ATM footage they say is Betty, airline records under her name, purchases moving between New York and Miami along with her travel, a designer purchase under Betty Idle, and a Gucci purchase under Salam Jackson. But there was still another digital trail. Remember that AMC purchase? Investigators tracked information connected to that transaction back to an IP address. They subpoenaed Verizon, and according to the affidavit, Verizon returned the subscriber name attached to that IP address, Salam Jackson. At this point, investigators weren't looking at one coincidence anymore. They believed they were building a pattern. And after tracing the Mazzellas' original $196,786.65, detectives came to one major conclusion. According to the sheriff's office, $178,786.65 of that money was connected to accounts Betty allegedly controlled, accessed, received money through, withdrew from, or personally transaction on. Again, that does not mean detectives are saying Betty personally pocketed all the $178,000, but they were saying enough of the money kept leading back to her that they believe they had probable cause. And eventually, they came for Betty. And eventually, investigators say they had enough, man. Betty Idle was arrested in connection with the alleged scheme. But I want to make something clear. I've seen people calling this a federal indictment. It's not. This is a Florida state case. And on August 14, 2026, prosecutors officially filed an information charge, Salone Jackson, with 4 felonies. Count 1, money laundering. Count 2, organized scheme to defraud. Count 3, grand theft. Count 4, principal to fraudulent use of personal identification information.
Nope, not that way. That way, make your, see that door's open that way? There. Right.
Small part player in a reality show is facing big-time charges accused of real estate fraud in Volusia County. Take a look at your screen on the right-hand side. That's video just sent to News 6 by the Sheriff's Office showing Salome Jackson being taken into custody tonight. She is better known as Betty Idle from her time on the reality shows Love and Hip Hop and Cartel Crew. Detectives say they tied her to an 11-month real estate fraud case. They say it scammed Orange City victims out of $198,000. Authorities say Jackson and other suspects used a fake ID to list a vacant parcel, tricked the real estate office into thinking they were dealing with the true owner, then had the victims wire money to a fake business account. Jackson is spending the night in the Volusia County Jail and faces a judge tomorrow.
It's a reminder that what look like gold online ain't always gold in real life. You can look at somebody with hundreds of thousands of followers, reality TV, designer clothes, vacations, a lifestyle that make it seem like they doing better than everybody watching them. Whole time, you might actually be living better than them. Now, I don't know whether Betty is guilty. That's for the courts to decide. And like I always tell y'all, an allegation is not a conviction. But if prosecutors can prove what they alleging, this wasn't some little scam. We're talking about a couple who thought they was buying property next to land they already own and end up losing nearly $200,000. And somewhere in the middle of all this is Betty Idle, a woman who already had one hell of a story before this even happened. According to her, Cartel daughter, as mentioned, singer, reality TV, losing her little sister, fighting publicly for justice, and now she's the one standing on the other side of the justice system. We'll definitely be following this case. But there you have it, fam. Let me know how you guys feel about this one in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And today, I'll catch you guys on the next one.